Hi, my name's Natalia.
I'm Kristen.
Hi, I'm Jackie.
And we did our project on pre- and post-zygotic barriers. Reproductive barriers are the biological features within organisms that do not allow them to reproduce. The two existing barriers are prezygotic, which prevents mating from occurring, and post-zygotic, which lowers the likelihood of an offspring surviving after birth. Here are examples of prezygotic barriers.
Mechanical isolation is when the morphological or structure of the organism prevents mating. An example of this is snails with left coiling shells cannot mate with snails having right coiling shells.
Habitat isolation is when the geographic ranges of two species overlap, but their ecological needs or breeding requirements differ enough to cause reproductive isolation. An example of this is in North and Central California, the red-legged frog breeds in fast-moving streams, while artificially introduced bullfrogs breed in ponds. The metamorphosis of these tadpoles are completely different.
Behavioral isolation is when species with complex courtship rituals usually exhibit a stereotyped, quote-unquote, give and take between male and female before actual mating takes place. For example, sticklebacks change color in the sun to develop a red underbelly. They build nests for the females, and then they do a dance. If the male fails at any step, no mating will occur.
Temporal isolation is when two species ranges overlap but have different periods of sexual activity or breeding seasons. An example of this is the Rana ora frog breeds from January to March, whereas the Rana bully frog breeds from late March to early May.
Gametic isolation is when the sperm and egg of the two species are chemically incapable and cannot fuse to form a zygote.
An example of this is the red sea urchin and the purple sea urchin. They both are in the same geological range and release their gametes at the same time. However, since they are genetically incompatible, the eggs of the purple sea urchin are not fertilized by the red sea urchin.
Now, here are some examples of post-zygotic barriers.
Hybrid inviability is when, despite the egg being fertilized, the parent's genetic information is incapable of taking the organism through the process of developing shape, also known as morphogenesis. Therefore, the embryo dies after just a few number of cell divisions. An example of this is when sheep and goats reproduce. Their offspring will die in the early stage of development.
Hybrid sterility is when a viable hybrid is produced, however, they are unable to produce offspring. This is because of meiotic problems that make them incapable of making sperm or egg. An example would be a horse and a donkey can have a mule, but a mule can't produce offspring.
Hybrid breakdown is a type of reproductive failure that appears after the F2 generation of crosses between different species or subspecies. It is caused by incompatibility between interacting genes. Males of this consumic strain are sterile, whereas the parent generation hybrids are completely fertile.
This occurs more often in plants. For example, the G. barbatus and G. hysterum cotton species. The infertility skips a generation.
We hope you enjoyed our project on pre- and post-zygotic barriers.